Let's start with the Rhino Blade from Power Rangers Jungle Fury. The important and amazing thing about this weapon is that it is also a morpher. It starts from a simple wooden bracelet and then becomes a morpher and transforms the person into the Rhino Ranger. This powerful weapon is a combination of morpher, blaster, and sword with which you transform, fight long distance, and melee. The Rhino Blade has destroyed entire platoons with just a few small missiles coming from the fingers. In its sword form, it can be used in various ways such as spinning and turning the Ranger into a living circular lock to give several quick cuts and finish off with a powerful final cut. Black Ranger Power Axe from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This weapon, besides having a very sharp and powerful cutting blade, can also be used as a power cannon. The power of this axe is so great that it is the initial and main weapon in the Mighty Morphin Power Cannon. Its energy is of such magnitude that it can wipe out entire battalions and as the main source of energy in the power cannon. We could say that it has also wiped out many monsters with just a little help from the other weapons. The Fire Smasher from Power Rangers Samurai. A sword that starts out normal-sized and turns into a giant sword with incredible power. It can cut through anything as its cut comes not only from the razor's edge, but from the power. Its cut is so wide that with one move it can cut a whole battalion in half. In addition to this, it turns into a cannon with the discs of the other Samurai Rangers cutting through any enemy that gets in the way. Another way it can be used is with an additional disc to get two Fire Smashers and create a sword party and cut enemies into several pieces. There are powerful blasters, but the Quantum Defender from Power Rangers Time Force is one of the most powerful. This powerful blaster can blast almost anything with such an impressive speed that it won't give the enemy time to react. In addition to this, it is not only a blaster, but it also turns into a powerful long sword that will cut enemies in half. The best thing about this weapon is its size and portability. Being so small, it is easy to carry and can always accompany the Ranger and be ready in less than a second. Another powerful weapon is the Magna Blaster, or also known as the Magna Sword from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. This sword is not just any sword. Starting with its great power and impressive cuts, this great sword transforms into a machine gun-style blaster that with a single reload shoots several times with just one pull of the trigger to annihilate one or more enemies at the same time. When taken out of its scabbard or case, it is a powerful sword, but while in its scabbard or case, the handle is bent to transform it into a very powerful blaster. If we talk about different powers, we must talk about the Snow Staff in Power Rangers Mystic Force. This long stick formed by a snowflake on the tip had the power to freeze the opponents. After they were frozen, you could do whatever you wanted with them. Although it may not seem extremely powerful, it really is, because being able to neutralize your enemy and then do whatever you want is the best advantage anyone can have over their opponent. We are used to a weapon being just a sword or a blaster, but we also have Rick from Power Rangers SPD. This robotic canine becomes a blaster that destroys everything in its path, in addition to many other utilities that he had in his first update. When the second update was made, he could connect with the Red Ranger's armor, proving that the dog is still man's best friend. If we talk about powerful swords, we must talk about the Dragon Dagger in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This is the dagger that the Green Ranger used and then passed to the Red Ranger. It has several functions and such great power that it provides additional protection to the Green Ranger's shield, even protecting him from powerful weapon beams like the Red Ranger's sword. In addition to that, it can also launch energy rays working as a melee attack because of its size, but its main function is that the one who has this dagger can control the Dragon Zord, since this dagger becomes a flute that when touched communicates with the dragon, allowing it to destroy large enemies from any position. The next weapon is the Gold Zeo Staff, the power staff of the Golden Ranger in Power Rangers Zeo. Its power is so overwhelming that humans cannot use it, and only Jason the Red Ranger could use it for a while, because when you get this weapon you also get the transformation and powers of the Golden Ranger. This weapon is created only for beings from the planet Triforia and can collect energy and then throw it with great power to kill their enemies. The staff also can summon the Great Golden Pyramid, and as we talked about at the beginning, it can pass the powers of the Golden Ranger to anyone who can withstand these powers. So, let's talk about the most powerful weapon of all, Saban from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Saban used by the White Ranger was a sword that had the head of a white tiger. The most impressive thing about this sword is that it had a life of its own, and that's why at first Tommy and Saban had some problems, but then they formed a great team. Saban not only functioned as a melee sword, but also launched laser beams from his eyes and could do it on his own to protect the Rangers. In addition, it controlled the White Tiger Zord, which was the Zord of the White Ranger. The most amazing thing is that he was not only a common weapon for any battle, he was also a mentor who gave Tommy advice and can arrive at any time to save the situation. The Power Rangers is a franchise that has 30 years of history and has many curiosities and secrets that some are already well known, but others are only known by the most fanatical fans of the franchise. Write in the comments how many of these curiosities you already knew. Let's start with the most famous of all, the origin of the Power Rangers. Many people who are not very close to the series think that Power Rangers is an original story from the United States, but the reality is that this franchise is an adaptation of another series that comes from Japan called Super Sentai. Another thing is that the series was not adapted from the beginning of Super Sentai, but in the season number 16 was when they began the adaptation for the United States. Despite being an adaptation, it really has many changes, since in America only the action scenes are used when the Rangers have their suits on, but the whole story has to change in order to create a story that is more adequate for the American culture. One of the interiorities that is only talked about among fans is about the actors and what one of them suffered inside the film set. The actor David Yost, who played the Blue Ranger Billy, suffered harassment because he is gay. This series began in 1993, and in those years the harassment towards homosexual people was big, since there was a lot of ignorance about the subject. Because of this actor was out of the franchise for many years, but now he is back for the 30th anniversary. Due to the budget and the problems of having to adapt a Japanese series, many of the scenes we see in the Mighty Morphin series are constantly repeated. The best-known example is the Zordon scenes, since the actor only recorded several takes and these were the only ones he had to do since the production team only repeated the take when they needed it. Another example of this are some scenes of Alpha 5 where we can see that in the first episode, he had different shoulders than those that would later become the official shoulders of the suit. In some shots you can see him with the old shoulders because they are scenes that they could continue to reuse. Today, it is normal to see characters that cross over to other series or movies, but in 1998 in Power Rangers in Space, the Rangers teamed up with the Ninja Turtles. This is something that was so well liked that there are even several comics with these crossovers, as well as a line of Ranger Turtles toys. The original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme song called Go Go Power Rangers is the most famous theme song of the franchise and has become an iconic song in popular culture. This song was used for the first seasons and was also used in the Alien Rangers season with some slight changes. The curiosity I bring you today is that your phone keypad can produce the tunes of this song when you press 332,393 to the beat of the song. Much of the first seasons were filmed in New Zealand, and the curious thing about this is that the series was banned in this country. After watching the first season, parents began to complain because they thought that the Power Rangers settled all conflicts by fighting and that children would do the same, so the country decided to cancel the series. The Mighty Morphin series has 145 episodes in total and Billy appears in every episode. In addition to this, he also appears in the next 10 chapters of Alien Rangers and is the only character in the series to make it. Many say that Alpha also appears in all the chapters, but it is not so, since he does not appear in Chapter 5 of the first season. However, we have to give him an honorable mention since he appears in all the chapters from Mighty Morphin to Zeo, except in that chapter, number 5. If you are not that much of a fan of the series, you might not know this fact, and that is that the Yellow Power Ranger was really a man. To explain this, you must have understood the beginning of this video since I said that Power Rangers is an adaptation of a Japanese series, and the American version used the action parts where the Rangers had the suits. In the Japanese series the Yellow Ranger was a man, but in the American version she was a woman. This is why in the American version when the Yellow Ranger has her costume on, she has a bigger body like a man. We all know that Megazords are the combination of several Zords to form a giant warrior Zord, and normally only 5 or 6 Zords are used to form this Megazord. In the Power Rangers RPM series, they wanted to go a little further and have a Megazord called the RPM Ultrazord that uses 12 Zords to make the combination. After 30 years of history, Tommy Oliver still holds several records that no one has been able to beat. He has been the Ranger with the most appearances with a total of 200 episodes, besides appearing in 8 different series. He is also the Ranger who has made more color changes since he has been the Green, White, Red and Black Ranger. Another record is that he has been the only Red Ranger in 2 different teams. The budget in Power Rangers sometimes caused problems and curiosities. One of these cases are the costumes of Power Rangers SPDA Squad. If we look at the helmets of this team of evil Rangers, we will be able to see that it is the same as the Power Rangers in Space Team. They just put the SPD logo on the helmet. The Power Rangers series was adapted from Super Sentai, but what inspired Super Sentai? Before the Japanese series, there was a Spider-Man series in Japan, as Marvel had made an alliance with Toei, and this allowed them to use the Spider-Man character and make any changes they wanted. In this series, Spider-Man had a flying car that was attached to a giant robot with which he could fight giant monsters. One of the most important things about Power Rangers is the Megazords. Every Power Rangers team has a Megazord, and sometimes they have more than one. Also, some villains have Megazords so they can battle the Power Rangers. The best-known Megazord of all is the Dino Megazord, the Mighty Morphin's Megazord. This Megazord is very powerful and has won many battles against many different enemies. Another one that is also very well known is the Dragon Zord, which is the Zord of the Green Ranger. This Zord is controlled by the Dragon Dagger and is also very powerful. Although these two Zords are very famous, they are not the most powerful. However, in this video I am not going to present to you the most powerful ones, but the biggest in size. These Megazords make the other Zords look like toys because of their enormous size. First, let's start by looking at the sizes of some Megazords so that we can have some comparison. The Dino Megazord is one of the smallest in the entire franchise, as it is 41 meters tall, which is equivalent to a 9-story building. One of the largest Megazords is the Dino Charge Ultra Zord, which is 97 meters tall, and that is equivalent to a 21-story tall building. This means that this Megazord is a little more than twice the size of the Dino Megazord. Still, if we watch the TV series, we wouldn't notice the size difference, as this wouldn't be a fair battle for the smaller Megazords, so for reasons of preserving the story and plot, they make all the Megazords about the same size on screen. Sometimes we may see that the Dino Megazord is even bigger than multi-story buildings, because in reality the comparison we make of the size of the Megazord and the buildings doesn't matter to the audience. This has only been important on very few occasions when they want to show that there is a giant Megazord, and today I am going to talk about two huge Megazords. The first one is the Evox Chimera Zord, which is a species of 7-headed dinosaur with wings. It has a large head in the center which is green and has 6 heads of different dinosaurs. Its body, including the wings and the 6 heads, is violet with some yellow details. Although this monster looks real, it is really a machine like any other Megazord. The measurements of this Megazord are not exact, but Jason compared it to the next Megazord that we are going to talk about later. Chimera shoots energy beams from its 7 mouths, and they are so powerful that they could take out any Ranger team. These heads spin around like clock hands, so this complicates things when it's throwing its beams all over the place. Due to its large size, it clearly possesses very great strength. Another thing we can highlight is the durability, since they needed the power of 3 Megazords to be able to defeat it. If we look at the image, we can see the great size he has, since these 3 Megazords measure less than 50 meters and look like toys next to this monster. Even so, The size of this Megazord does not surpass the largest in the history of the franchise. Serpentera, a well-known Megazord which belonged to Lord Zed. This Megazord is 345 meters tall, which is equivalent to a 77-story building. If we make a comparison with a famous place, this Megazord is a little bigger than the Eiffel Tower. Serpentera is a dragon, which also has a very long tail. If we add the tail to its height measurement, then Serpentera is 500 meters long, which is equivalent to a 111-story building. This size can be compared to Taipei 101 in Taiwan, which is just over 500 meters and has 101 floors. Despite its large size, Serpentera was not invincible because it had a great weakness, and that is that it needed a lot of energy to activate, and that energy was spent quickly. This is why it never won the battles, even though it could have done it in a very easy way. In addition to its large size, Serpentera launched lightning bolts from its mouth and could also fly. The last time we saw this giant was in the episode Forever Red, where we can see Cole ramming the dragon through its mouth, as that was its weakest point. This caused the destruction of Serpentera and was a bit disappointing as the size difference was wrong in proportion. If a ranger had entered Serpentera's mouth, it would be like a human eating a grain of rice. Although this monster no longer appears on television, in the comics it returned alongside Lord Draken. Somehow Draken had obtained this giant Megazord and used it in the final battle against the Rangers. Serpentera destroyed several Megazords effortlessly and was a real threat, unlike the TV version, which was only impressive because of its size. This version of Serpentera was so dangerous that it ate the Megazords as if they were candy, and the size proportion was more accurate because if we look at the image, the Rangers looked like grains of rice. In this same comic we could see how the Rangers managed to stop this monster that was more dangerous than its TV version. The Rangers joined several Megazords from different eras and multiverses with a calculation made by Jen, the Pink Ranger of the Time Force team. Then, they made it grow, and only this giant Super Megazord, which didn't even have a name, could take on Serpentera. This new Megazord stuck his sword through his back, piercing and destroying him. It is not known what the measurements of this new Megazord were, but apparently it is the same size as Serpentera when it is standing still, that is, 345 meters tall. Each Ranger achieves a different connection with the Morphin grid, and each Morpher is different, since some are just to achieve a transformation and others are used as weapons. In addition to this, each Power Rangers saga has its own style to make morph, and today I'm going to mention some of the best ones. Let's start with the most obvious of all, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. We start with this morph since every good Power Rangers fan knows that this morph should be on any list, but let's face it, we only like this morph for nostalgia. If you started watching Power Rangers since Mighty Morphin, you're sure to get goosebumps just listening to the music. It's a feeling of excitement that energizes your body and makes you want to jump up and down and do the morph yourself as well. But if we are honest, this morphosis is one of the simplest. They just grabbed their morpher, put it to the front and mentioned their animal, while with some pretty simple effects they transformed into the glorious Power Rangers. At the end, they would appear spinning to finish with a pose. We can't criticize the special effects too much or evaluate them with so much detail since it was 1993 and the special effects for those times were not as good as they are now. Only a few movies managed to stand out with great digital effects, and they needed a huge budget, which the Power Rangers series did not have. Even so, the theme song used by the mighty Morphin can be considered the best or one of the best, but we'll talk about that in another video. Now let's switch to Power Rangers Jungle Fury, one of the fiercest morphs in the entire franchise. The Ranger puts on his morpher goggles and makes wild ninja-style moves. Along with his moves you can see an energy being created and his background changes to a jungle. Then we see his wild animal come out and then the transformation is complete with more wild moves and effects. This is a morph that fits very well with the theme of that season. We'll continue with Power Rangers SPD. This is a morph that for some reason many like and it is one of those that instills greater authority. His morpher opens and creates a hologram image of the suit while the background is like a tunnel that moves very fast. The Ranger with a jump transforms and first appears with the suit on and then, in a great sequence, appears his helmet to finish standing on top of the SPD emblem and gives several movements. Now let's enter the storm with Power Rangers Ninja Storm where they begin a morph by entering a storm to then see how his clothes explode and his suit appears. Then his helmet appears in parts to finish with an excellent pose. In HTE background appears the nature powers of each Ranger with their insignia. This morph is worthy of its name and makes you feel that you have the power of nature on your side, and you are ready to fight. The Power Rangers Dino Thunder morph is one that combines the background effects with the transformation very well. This morph has a lot of fury, energy, and feels powerful despite looking simple. They start by activating their morpher to then have a white suit with their emblem in the center. Then they take turns as their suit color is pieced together. Now comes my favorite part as they fall on a rock that breaks and lava comes out. Their helmet appears and, in the background, their Zord appears in an exciting way with various explosion effects. Hearing the name Power Rangers Mystic Force, it is hard to imagine what a morpher will be like since it is a name that has nothing tangible, but this morpher they did very well. They open their morpher which launches a power into the sky, the ring opens from which their power comes out and they enter through the ring. This completes the transformation of the suit and then the helmet to finish with a pose and their cape billowing. Now, we need concentration as we will become Power Rangers Samurai who use their morpher to write their symbols in front of them and then appear in a background with many symbols floating around. Those same symbols create like a small tornado around them, transforming them with their costume. Then comes the best part, their sword comes flying in, they catch it and put it away to put their disc on it and then take it out to pose. Now let's stop playing games and let's see Power Rangers Beast Morphers. In this amazing morph they turn on their morpher and then enter the key and start the transformation. Then, my favorite part, comes a big tornado that tucks them in and out of the tornado, and from the tornado an animal comes out in a very fierce way. At the end comes out their helmet and from their morpher comes out the helmet visor to finish the morph in style. In this list we must include Power Rangers Wild Force. This morpher, besides having a great theme song, also has a good sequence. It starts with its morpher turning into each ranger's animal and then into a warrior. The morpher explodes and out comes the transformed ranger to then give to the final part, which is the best, as the helmet comes in a somewhat wild way with good effects to complete the morph. Ironically, we are going to end this list with the last morphosis, the last of this list and the last of the franchise so far, and that is Power Rangers Dino Fury. This morph has become one of my favorites as it recreates a connection to the Morphin grid. This morph begins by turning his morpher around to activate it, and then the action begins. The background changes and the ranger hits the ground, which is destroyed and raises a grid of energy that begins to envelop the ranger. This grid coalesces and forms each ranger's dinosaur. Then comes my favorite part, and I think that is what makes this morph so good, and that is when the ranger begins to float in the Morphin grid. The Morphin grid wraps around the ranger and transforms him. In the end, comes the helmet that joins in the middle, and the ranger finishes by pulling out his sword. Each morphosis has its own magic, and each one provokes a different feeling depending on the music, the energy, and how connected you are with the series at that moment. After the Morphin, each ranger transforms into a different costume, but what changes the most is almost always the helmet. In several seasons of Power Rangers, the helmets are different for each ranger, and it all depends on the theme of that season. Today we won't talk about the costumes, because even though the costume and helmet are a complete uniform, sometimes the costumes are all the same and only the colors change. However, helmets change most of the time. Today we'll talk about the best helmets I've seen in Power Rangers. Leave in the comments your favorite helmets, and remember that each ranger has a different helmet, so you can mention the season and the color of the ranger. I'm going to start with my favorite helmet, and it's on my favorite ranger. The Black Ranger from Mighty Morphin with the Mastodon helmet. This season we know that the theme is prehistoric animals, and the Black Ranger has the power of the Mastodon. This is an extinct animal that was like a hairy elephant with big tusks. That is why the helmet has two tusks on the sides, and in the center, it has lines like the mastodon's trunk. As a curious fact, many people confuse the mastodon with the mammoth, and they are not the same animal, although they are very similar. My second favorite helmet is the Mighty Morphin White Ranger helmet, as it has a nice color combination with white, gold and black. This ranger's power comes from the white tiger, and if we look at the top of the helmet, we will see the lines that the white tiger has on his head. This is a subtle, but effective detail, as it gives him that presence of the white tiger and therefore influences leadership. One of the changes that I really liked in this helmet is the part of the mouth being flat without the shape of the lips, then changed the perspective. Let's continue with Commander Kruger's helmet, which has the shape of the commander's two ears. The shape of the black visor gives it a very future style and combines very well with the shape of the ears. One detail that I really liked about all SPD Rangers is that they have the police insignia in the front of the helmet. This detail is very important, as this season is based on a police style and they always wear the badge all over the uniform. The only thing we don't know about this helmet is how the commander can put his whole nose inside the helmet. This is a Power Rangers mystery. Another amazing helmet is the Dino Thunder White Ranger helmet, which has a fierce style. The theme of this season was dinosaurs, and that is why the style should be with many cuts and lines to look like dinosaur markings. Even though this helmet is quite simple, it has something that makes it spectacular, and that is that the visor of the helmet is red and has an incredible shape. Another thing is that it has a wing on the top that is very similar to those of your dinosaur. From this same season we must also mention the Black Ranger, and basically for the same reasons. In this case the helmet is black with golden details. In the Jungle Fury season there are two Rangers that have very striking helmets that carry the name of the series very well. The Purple Ranger and the Red Ranger, both of which have a very wild design and make you feel like you are inside the jungle. The red one is a simpler helmet with only two colors, yet the lines and design look great. Also, the red and black colors are colors that make you feel empowered and something very wild like the theme of the season. The purple one has a design on the sides that makes the helmet very different from the others, plus it has a combination of three colors. Explaining these designs is a bit complicated, but just looking at them is enough to know that they are very good. Finally, the season that had the best helmets was Power Rangers Wild Force. This season has 6 Rangers and 4 of those Rangers have spectacular helmets. We can start with the Black Ranger's helmet that has a very similar design to his animal. The Black Ranger's power comes from the bison, a very large and powerful animal with small horns. The bison is dark in color and so it suits the Black Ranger. Plus the helmet also has the small horns of the bison. Those little horns give it a very different detail than all the other helmets in the franchise. Next is the Red Ranger helmet, which has the power of the lion. What I like most about this helmet is that when we see it face to face, we can see the lion's gaze, and that causes intimidation to the enemy. We can see the yellow eyes, nose and fangs of the lion in the visor of the helmet. The colors of this helmet are very simple, but its design is so good that it doesn't need to have many colors to look amazing. After that we have the Silver Ranger helmet, which has the power of the wolf. Just like the Red Ranger design, this helmet we can also see the look of the animal, but here we have a mix of colors that makes the helmet look modern and wild at the same time. The ears, the fangs on the helmet visor and the red eyes also causes intimidation to the enemy. Finally, the White Tiger is repeated, and the White Ranger of this season has one of the best helmets in the history of the franchise, and the impressive thing is that even though it has an animal that was already used in the series previously, even so, its design was spectacular. In this helmet they use again the lines of the tiger's head, but the pink color gives it a special and feminine touch. The big yellow eyes stand out very well in the design, and the silver jaw gives it a very wild touch as well. When the Power Rangers series started, all the Rangers were human, but over the years this has changed. Now, there are many different Power Rangers, and some are even further away from our human normality. Let's not talk about the villains or the mentors, since we know that almost all of them are beings from other worlds. In this video, I only want to mention the Power Rangers that appear in the TV series, since in the comics it is something very different because they can draw anything. We can start by saying that normally humans give orders to dogs, but in Power Rangers SPD there is a dog that gives orders to humans. Commander Kruger, which is a human-shaped dog that comes from planet Sirius. All the inhabitants of this planet are like Kruger, with a skin full of scales like snakes and some differences. Males have longer ears and their skin color can vary between blue, purple or red regardless of gender. Some of these inhabitants may have dreadlocked hair like the commander's wife had. Although Kruger speaks like a human, when angry he can make noises like a dog. The inhabitants of planet Sirius were the founders of SPD. Unfortunately, their planet was destroyed by Emperor Grum. Kruger and his wife are the only known survivors so far in the TV series. Although Kruger is the mentor of SPD, he also becomes a Power Ranger, and that's why I mentioned him in this video. In this same season of SPD we can see that all the Rangers are very different, and we can mention the whole team, including Cat Manx, who comes from a race with feline characteristics like the cats of the earth. The weirdest thing is that we can see that a dog and a cat have fought together as Power Rangers. Still, for me the weirdest one is still the Omega Ranger, since he doesn't even have a real body. The Omega Ranger comes from the future, and due to time travel, his body became a floating sphere of light. When the Omega Ranger morphs, so he has a body, but he must stay with the transformation. Like the entire SPD team, B Squadron, the Omega Ranger named Sam also has powers. These powers come from experiments Cat Manx was doing on the parents of all these Rangers. Continuing with the list, we can mention two brothers who are very different from the other Power Rangers. Andrus and Astronema, who come from planet KO-35, and both were Rangers in Power Rangers in Space. The weird thing about all this is Astronema's story, as she was a villain, but also became a Power Ranger. When she was little, a villain named Darkonda took her somewhere else, and Ecliptor raised her. Because of this, she only learned bad things and became one of the worst villains in the franchise. Astronema was Dark Spectre's lieutenant. Basically she was inside the organization of the worst villains in all of space. Even so, when her brother realized that she was his sister, he did everything he could to get her out of that mess. One of the things Andrus did was to turn her into a Power Ranger, but this only worked for a very short time. Then when Andrus destroyed Zordon, the energy that came out purified Astronema and turned her into a good person. Sometime later she was able to become the Pink Ranger in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and with this she fulfilled her dream of being a Power Ranger. It's amazing to see how such a cruel villain could become a Ranger. Imagine Divatox becoming a Ranger after all this time. Astronema was also seen in the legendary battle fighting with many Ranger teams. In this video we can also mention the Alien Rangers, as they were inhabitants of another planet very different from Earth. The Alien Rangers came to Earth to save the Power Rangers team as they were in danger. Physically, they have some differences from humans, especially their face and head. Another difference is that they need to be very hydrated in order to live, since they live underwater on their home planet. Something very rare about these Rangers is that they did not use morphers to transform, they only did it with their inner power. One of the stories I like the most is that of Cole Evans, the Red Ranger from Power Rangers Wild Force. His parents were in search of a place called Animarium, which is a floating island that later becomes the base of the Wild Force Power Rangers. In this trip, they took their son Cole with them, and they were also accompanied by a friend named Dr. Victor. This trip was in the Amazon, and they found some seeds that were part of the original Master Org. Victor ate these seeds and became the new Master Org. Cole's mother knew they were in danger, so she hit her son, and then Master Org wiped out Cole's parents. Master Org never found Cole, but a tribe of local natives were able to find him. After growing up with the tribe, Cole had many skills that made him an excellent candidate to be a Power Ranger. The tribe returns to Cole what his mother left him before hiding him, a picture of his parents and the red lion crystal. Cole then goes to the city to find his way in life, and there he meets the Power Rangers and becomes the leader of this team. Because he was raised by a tribe far from the city, he had a bit of a hard time adjusting to society, and some thought he was a fool. He also had problems with the former leader of that Wild Force Power Rangers team, as they both wanted to be the leader. Cole appeared in the legendary battle and in the Forever Red episode, being the main ranger of this episode as he was part of the Wild Force season. We may all have different tastes, and if one of your favorite seasons is not in this video, you can write it in the comments. What makes each season special is a good script, good acting, and that it keeps us with a lot of emotion in each episode. Besides this, it also depends on how connected we are with the season, because if you watched any season when you were a kid, then you will be so connected to that season that you will always think it is the best one for you. We must also evaluate the costumes, the transformations, the powers, and the style that each series has used for everything else, for example, dinosaurs, space, etc. We'll start with Power Rangers SPD Season 13, aired in 2005. This series has a police style in which they catch the enemies as if they were arresting them, just like normal police. They also use phrases, logos, and zords, very police style. The costumes are very well designed, including the helmets that are always important in all Power Rangers costumes. The transformation has very good presentation and their characters are well built. The script of this series started out very serious, plus they included the first Omega Ranger of the franchise. One of the things I like most about this season is Commander Kruger, who is a high-level mentor, and best thing of all is that he is also a Power Ranger. The next season is Power Rangers Zeo, season number 4, aired in 1996. What I like most about this season is that it is still somewhat connected to Mighty Morphin, as it has several characters that made the jump to Zeo. The Zeo crystals were so powerful that they have been commented on throughout the history of the comics. Obviously, as we expected, the acting was still of the same quality, as they are almost all the same actors as the past seasons. The villains this season started off on the right foot, as the Machine Empire got Rita and Zed off the ground, which makes us feel that they are more powerful and darker. One of the best things Power Rangers Zeo had was the Gold Ranger and the arrival of Jason to the series. The Gold Ranger's powers have been so iconic that after many years fans still love this character and his transformation. Another favorite season is Power Rangers in Space from 1998. This is season number 6, and it was the last of the Zordon era, giving a culmination to one of the best sagas in history. We all know that Zordon will always be one of the most iconic characters in the entire franchise, and this season was his last appearance due to his passing. This alone makes the season memorable. But this is not the only thing that makes this season one of the best. The villains of this saga make the story much more entertaining, and besides that, we have one of the best villains in all of history, Astronema, who later ends up being part of the Power Rangers and sister of the Red Ranger. All this makes the plot iconic, and its characters will be remembered forever. Finally, we must mention its Red Ranger, which has been one of the best Red Rangers of the whole franchise. In 2001, it was presented what would be one of the best seasons of Power Rangers that would mark the history of the franchise. Power Rangers Time Force, being season number 9, which had a very good idea from the beginning with time travel. In this season we are introduced to one of the best villains in history, Rancic, which is considered the best villain by many fans and one of the few villains who actually was never defeated. Time Force was able to make history because even though Wes is the central protagonist, it is the only series that has a female Pink Ranger as the leader. Another thing I like is that there are 2 Red Rangers. One is Wes, who is the main Red Ranger and is considered one of the best Rangers in the franchise. The other is Eric, the Quantum Ranger, who is the 6th Ranger this season and one of my favorite Red Rangers. Although the costume design is very simple, the helmets have been iconic since the visor is the same color as the costume and not black like the helmets in all the other seasons. I know there are many who are not going to think the same, but for me the best season is still going to be the first one, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This is not only due to nostalgia, but it is the series that started it all and marked history forever. It premiered in 1993, and after 30 years of history, fans are still asking for the characters to reappear in the current series, and as many already know, this will happen in the new season in 2023. Mighty Morphin has many advantages in its favor, for example, being the first, then, it wasn't going to seem like a repeat of some other Power Ranger series. We can also say that it had the best Red Ranger of all time and the Ranger who has appeared the most in the entire franchise, Tommy Oliver. Both Rangers have been key to the franchise and are 2 icons after 30 years of history. To this we add that his mentor, Zordon, was a revolutionary character for that time, since the appearance of his face inside a glass tube was something innovative at the time. In addition, Zordon marked an era being the best mentor of the entire franchise and remembered by all Power Rangers fans. Although Lord Zed appears later, he is still connected to this season, and we all know that he is one of the most recognizable villains of the entire franchise. Each person has their favorites that marked their life, since it all depends on when you started watching Power Rangers. Normally the first season we see is the one that makes the biggest impact on us, and that is why Mighty Morphin will continue to be the favorite of many, regardless of the script, the mistakes, or many other things that could have been improved. But we must give them credit that it was the first series in America, and they started in a way that marked every step they took. Red Rangers have almost always been the leaders of the various Power Rangers teams. Many have natural leadership and superior skills, as taking control of a team takes a lot more than just calling in the Megazord. This list is based on my opinion, as each of us feels a different approach to each ranger. Leave your favorite Red Rangers in the comments. Over the years, multiple Red Rangers have appeared, and while all have proven their bravery, they can't all be on this list. We must start with Tommy Oliver, who, although he has not been the best Red Ranger, is still a legendary Ranger. Tommy has twice held the position of leader as a Red Ranger. First, it was in Power Rangers Zeo, where he had his first opportunity as a Red Ranger, proving that he could lead the team with a great power such as the Zeo Crystal. Then he had another chance as the Red Ranger in Power Rangers Turbo. This time he was not in the whole season and had to give up his power, but in the short time he was there he proved that he was still an excellent Red Power Ranger. The reason why Tommy is not in first place on this list is that both moments of being the Red Ranger were not his best moments. Tommy is best remembered in history for being the Green and White Ranger. He is even more remembered for being the Black Power Ranger in Dino Thunder. We continue with Carter Grayson from Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. While Lightspeed Rescue is not one of my favorite series, I have to say that Carter deserves to be on this list. Carter has the attitude of a classic superhero who will do anything to save a life. He is able to break the rules and even risk his own life to save others. He has a noble soul and is a great firefighter with passion. One of the things we should point out about Carter is that, despite being a noble man, he is also a very strict leader, and that is why everyone respects his leadership. Part of being a leader is knowing how to recruit, as you must have the ability to see the talent in other people and recognize who can be that person you need. This was demonstrated when Carter is the one who starts recruiting all the Red Rangers for the Forever Red battle. The next Red Ranger is Cole Evans from Wild Force Power Rangers. Although Cole initially had a hard time adapting to the modern world because he was raised in the wilderness by a tribe, he still had the ability to adapt and learn what he needed to be a great leader. Because he was raised in the middle of nature, he developed a natural ability. He had great agility and very good reflexes. Despite having lived such a hard life without his parents, that didn't stop him from excelling and becoming a Red Ranger by nature. We must remember that Cole was the one who destroyed Serpentera, Lord Zeed's giant Zord, in the Forever Red episode. Next on this list is Eric Myers, the Quantum Ranger. Although some may not consider him a Red Ranger just because he is not the leader of a team, he really is, and this is demonstrated by his appearance in the Battle of Forever Red. Eric is the only sixth Ranger to be a Red Ranger and to be part of a team that already had a Red Ranger. Even though he had a bit of a cold personality, he would show up at the most needed moments and help save the day. Moreover, he is one of the Rangers who carries one of the most powerful weapons in the entire history of the franchise. Eric strongly desired to be accepted as a Ranger, and this caused him to prove his bravery on more than one occasion. One of the few women to be a Red Ranger was Lauren Shiba from Power Rangers Super Samurai. Being the first female Red Ranger carries a huge responsibility, as it represents so much more than just being a Red Ranger. For years men have been the Red Rangers and team leaders, and very rarely has a woman led a team and been a Red Ranger at the same time. On top of this, Lauren carried the burden of her brother being the previous leader, and the loyalty of the team was divided, which added another level of difficulty to the matter. Lauren had to earn everyone's respect and prove that she could be a great leader and one of the best Red Rangers ever. The power she has is incredible and her leadership is unquestionable. In the penultimate position, I must mention Andrus from Power Rangers in Space. Andrus managed to escape from villains like Divatox, Lord Zed, and Rita Repulsa. Besides this, he had to fight against very powerful villains like the Psycho Rangers, Dark Spectre, and Astronema. Andrus had the hardest mission of all history, and that was to sacrifice Zordon to save an entire galaxy. This mission, although it may seem easy, is actually the hardest of all. Imagine that you must take the life of your mentor by his own orders. It is a very difficult internal battle to decipher, and Andrus only had several seconds to make this decision and live with the consequences for the rest of his life. It is known that for all Power Rangers, Zordon was like a father, and therefore this mission becomes almost impossible. This makes him one of the best leaders in history, as he made one of the most difficult decisions to save everyone else, even if it meant taking the life of a very important being. Those decisions are only made by true leaders. There are many who will agree that the first on the list should always be Jason, the first Red Ranger and the leader of leaders. For the youngsters who watched Power Rangers from seasons 1995 onwards, I invite you to look up the episodes of the First Rangers, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and you will get to know a great leader. Jason's leadership is so great that thanks to him the Power Rangers franchise had a great success from the beginning, unlike many other series that take a long time to start. From the first day you saw Jason on screen, almost every kid wanted to be the Red Ranger, and this was only because of Jason's influence. Despite Tommy Oliver being a legendary Ranger, he would ask Jason for leadership advice. Jason's mark has been so impressive that despite only being in 2 seasons of Power Rangers 29 years ago, he is still the most influential Power Ranger of them all. Despite Power Rangers being a series aimed at all ages, the reality is that they have created very good villains, and, on many occasions, they are even scary. In addition, in the comics, which are aimed at a more adult audience, we can also see excellent villains. After 30 years of history, we can make many lists of the most powerful villains. Here is my list, don't forget to leave yours in the comments. In this list, I am not going to add Ivan Ooze because he is not canon, and we have a complete video about this powerful villain. Let's start by talking about Emperor Grum from Power Rangers SPD, who is one of the ugliest and creepiest villains to ever appear in the series. With a skeletal body and glowing red eyes, he looks like death, and this makes him look more menacing. He has conquered and massacred several worlds, and he has also tried it with the Earth. His ship alone can destroy an entire planet, and although this villain worked for Onmi, a great malevolent brain that was behind all the plans, and that Grum was only attacking the Earth to get the resources to create him a body, even so, the one who did all the dirty work was Grum. This powerful villain tormented the Kruger for a long time, lying to him about the death of his wife, and Grum had her kidnapped and alive. Another powerful villain is Lothar from Power Rangers Ninja Storm. This villain was a psychotic ninja master who led his own army. He aimed to destroy all the ninja academies so he could be the one and only ultimate dark ninja master. He was so insane that he kidnapped students from the ninja academy run by his brother and turned his brother into a guinea pig. Although the series shows a fun, goofy, fourth-wall-breaking Lothar, this villain was really a psychopath who was capable of anything, including killing the parents of the Thunder Rangers. His greatest attribute is his personality, which can confuse you as he pretends to be a good and gentle person when he is a villain with no feelings or remorse. Let's move on to a more well-known villain, Divatox, a space pirate who has a war with the Power Rangers Turbo. This villain may fool you with her pretty appearance, but she is actually rotten inside. Although she may not look like such a powerful villain, she is the only villain who was able to defeat the Power Rangers in the TV series. This villain is in search of fame and wealth, which is why she roams the universe in a galactic submarine plundering worlds to quench her thirst for greatness. This pirate participated in the kidnapping of Zordon and was in charge of hiding him in different worlds while his powers were taken away. One of the most famous and powerful villains is Lord Zed. He is the villain who controlled Rita for many years, although he later married her. He even forced Golder to kill his own brother to prove his loyalty. This villain is so powerful that he managed to destroy the Power Rangers' Zords, in addition to kidnapping several of them and nearly destroying them. His physique is very scary because he has a burned body with metallic bones and a mask with a red crystal, plus he carries a cane which helps him to channel all his power. Lord Zed was so dark and terrifying when he came to the series that many parents complained and had to modify this character a bit to make him not so dark. If we talk about space villains, we must talk about Astronema from Power Rangers in Space. In the United Alliance of Evil, she was only surpassed by Dark Spectre, and when he was not there she took over as the Princess of Evil. She was raised at the hands of Ecliptor for the purpose she fulfilled, to be heir to Dark Spectre's throne. Astronema has been one of the few villains who has managed to kill a Ranger. She managed to trap the Pink Ranger of the Prisma Rangers and tried to get the location of Zordon from her, but since the Pink Ranger didn't tell her anything, Astronema crushed her spine, causing her instant death. One villain that many fans have said is one of the most powerful is Rancic from Power Rangers Time Force. This villain is a mutant who comes from the year 3000 and travels to the past and fights against the Power Rangers. Because of his appearance, he was rejected and outcast, and this gives him motivation to do evil. His humanoid appearance makes him feel a little more real, and I think the terror in the viewer is greater because beyond looking like a fantasy, it seems a reality. This villain has been one of the few that the Rangers of his time could not defeat him. They even managed to catch him only because he surrendered and gave himself up. Although there are other villains such as Dark Spectre that could be on this list, I only wanted to focus on those who had direct battles with the Power Rangers, and this includes the multiverse, and therefore Lord Draken, for me, would be the villain of villains. Lord Draken, formerly known as Tommy Oliver, is a villain from an alternate universe, who, unlike the Tommy Oliver we know, agreed to stay with Rita after coming out of his spell. After learning the spells that Rita taught him, he killed her to become the main conqueror of the world. This villain managed to kill several Rangers and transformed Kimberly into his servant, in addition to defeating Jason after stealing the power of the White Ranger and fusing it with the power of the Green Ranger. Lord Draken was driven by the evil inside him and the distrust he had in everyone. He even told the Rangers that friends were useless. He created a whole army dressed as Rangers, and each one had a specific function, and transformed his world into a chaos full of darkness and terror. We know that the list can go on and on because after 30 years of history, Power Rangers has a lot of very good villains, so leave in the comments which other villains you would add to this list and why. If you like Power Rangers villains, like this video and subscribe to this channel for more Power Rangers badassery.